So today we're going to talk about the Harmony Perspectives Genius Style, or the ENFJ type in the Myers-Briggs system. This type is also often called the counselor. But before I really launch into this webinar, I want to talk about the three different styles of people that this webinar is addressing. The first type are people who are ENFJs themselves, the Harmony Perspectives users. I'll be talking directly to you for most of the webinar. The second style of person I'll be talking to are people who are friends and family of ENFJs. So those of you who have a close member or a close relationship with someone of this type and want to get to know them better. And the third type of person I'll be talking to are people who are just trying to get to know all of the types a little more in depth. But that said, I'm primarily talking to those of you who are ENFJ. So if I go in and out of pronouns, I say you, they, we, etc., that's natural. Again, primarily talking to those of you who are ENFJs. All right, so let's get right into it. As an overview of all the types, ENFJs have the most social awareness and direct understanding of social situations. Other types have strong inclinations towards understanding these things, but it's the ENFJ that combines a complex emotional understanding with how people think. So those two pieces together make it so that ENFJs are, they're second to none when they understand complex social relationship issues. At their best, ENFJs handle sensitive situations and people with ease. They're master diplomats. Their distinctive approach is that of a compassionate teacher. And people of this type have a strong inclination to bring out the best in each person. So they slip into the skins of other people so easily that they quickly find themselves adopting their habits, beliefs, and the like in order to truly empathize. So people who are ENFJs, you may have even seen yourself do this. It's almost like you're mimicking another person. You're mimicking sort of how they think in order to truly empathize with how they think. And this is why you are so good at understanding how people relate to each other, because you're kind of slipping in and out of all these different skins and really figuring out what's going on for these people and why is it that their relationships are either good or bad. Let's talk about who's in the car. Now, this webinar is a companion piece to a PDF profile that goes through the complete personality and talks about what's called the car diagram or the car model to really break down all of the mental processes that make up your personality. But I'd like to go through each of the four mental processes that influence your personality the most, a little more in granular detail. So in the driver position, we have a process called harmony, or what is technically called extroverted feeling. To round you out, in the co-pilot position is a process called perspectives, or technically called introverted intuition. Directly behind the co-pilot, we have its exact or mirror opposite of extroverted sensing or sensation. And that's the 10-year-old position. And then directly behind the driver, we have your 3-year-old position of accuracy, or was technically called introverted thinking. So your driver's your flow state. Your co-pilot or navigator is what we call your growth state, because that's where you want to spend a lot of time and effort developing your personality. Then the 10-year-old position is what we call your defensive position. We'll talk about that in a moment. And the 3-year-old position is what we call your blind spot. And we'll talk about that too. But let's start with the driver, or your flow state. Now, it's your flow state because this is where you juice your batteries. This is where you go to get your energy. And the way that it looks for you is, number one, it's totally people and society oriented. You understand complex social interactions unlike anybody else. You really get how people feel and respond emotionally to different situations, and you really understand how we're all impacting each other on this emotional level, which means that you're very society oriented too, because society is running on these conventions of making sure that we're not unduly creating conflict. You have a strong bond with human rituals. These rituals are how we relate and connect to each other. So you really understand the meaning of ritual, and you really understand the meaning of social interconnectedness. And you focus on bringing people together. That makes sense. Now, harmony for you is an amazing way of really getting relationships. You really understand the relationship element. So anything that encourages a harmonious relationship, harmonious tribe, harmonious culture, all that you're just going to instantly recognize, and you don't even have to think about it anymore. This is something you've been doing your whole life. You're excellent at it. You're very good at it. And you just get it. You walk into a room and you get the culture of the room instantly. You know who's high status, low status, who's got a crush on who. All that stuff is immediately obvious to you. So harmony is the extroverted part of you. So that's the part that is interested in others, interested in your outside world. And it's a feeling process. So this is actually how you're evaluating information, is through a more personal component. But to be a complete person, you need a way to interact with your inner world, and you need a way to understand new information. So that's what your co-pilot process does of perspectives. It's introverted, so it goes inside, and it's intuition, so it's helping you understand information by pattern recognition. And this is what it does for you. It's very future oriented. So when you're using this process, you get to see things, you get basically to future pace. You recognize maybe where relationships are going. You get really good at sort of spotting where something, like what course something is on, basically you're charting courses. You're understanding what the destination point is for these different social components. And this also makes you very insightful. Perspectives, the way that it works is that on some level, you're kind of divorced from your own perspective. You're watching your unconscious mind form patterns. And so you kind of get what we call the pattern of the patterns, which is if my brain is forming patterns this way, I bet other people's brains are forming patterns in the exact way. This is kind of how minds form patterns. And since you're a little divorced from your own perspective, this means you can actually jump into somebody else's perspective rather easily. So you can see lots of different points of views. This is also where you can see the point of view into the future. This makes you extremely insightful. And so when you do something like relationship coaching, it doesn't matter whether or not you're an official licensed certified relationship coach. It doesn't matter. People of your type are almost always doing relationship coaching for their friends and family because they're just the go-to person when it comes to relationships. And this means that you're seeing not just one point of view, but you're seeing all points of view, including the perspective of the relationship itself, almost like that's a person too. And this also helps you understand language and metaphor. This is great in conflict resolution. Understanding language, the reason why perspectives is so wonderful at this is you know that when I use a word, let's say I'm using the word cup or teacup, you know that I have a picture in my head. And when I use the word teacup, you've got a picture in your head too. And you know that the picture is different. Right? Even though we're both talking about teacups and we both know what we're talking about, my picture in my head is going to be different than the picture in your head because we have different experiences with teacups. So when we're talking about something concrete and tangible like a teacup, that's okay. But when we get more abstract, like concepts like loyalty or fidelity or love, now things can get really messy because the picture in my head might be totally different than the picture in your head. When you're doing conflict and relationship management, knowing that people might be using the same word but talking about two different concepts is incredibly powerful. And people of your type just kind of get that. They get that people have different pictures in their heads, and this helps them manage those relationships better by going, hey, you guys are using two different words, but I think you're actually saying the same thing. It's that kind of thing. So when you've got these two parts of you working in conjunction with each other, harmony and perspectives, this is where you are, you're a superhero, right? This is your superpower. This is an amazing combination. You have to make sure you're focusing on making sure you're going to that perspectives place, even if it's difficult for you. People of your type can sometimes have what's called monkey mind, where they almost think that they're ADD, like they love flashy things and shiny objects, and it's really hard for them to focus or concentrate or have a quiet moment. Perspectives requires total sensory deprivation to work at its best. So you have to train yourself to make sure that you're quieting your mind and going to basically a really sensory deprived place on a regular basis. That might be difficult at first, but that's where you get your best creative thinking done. All right, let's talk about your 10-year-old. All right, so extroverted sensing or sensation. How does it work for people of your type? Well, this is the place where you overindulge in sensory pleasures. And Honestly, people of your type can sometimes fight with weight issues because they tend to be emotional eaters. Now, the reason why you do this is that going inside of yourself to that quiet place, that can be scary for an extrovert. I know because I'm an extrovert and there be dragons, right? You go inside yourself and there's all sorts of stuff you don't want to have to see maybe. And the outside world is so much more interesting. So if you have a feeling, if you have basically a final decision or judgment or an evaluation you've made from the outside world, right? You're using harmony to make this final decision on something. And if you go inside, your ability to see things from other people's perspectives might actually change your mind. You can skip this process and go to sensation, which is also extroverted and keeps you in the outside world. But instead of simply looking for information to support it, a lot of times because it's an emotional evaluation that harmony is making, you just kind of want to comfort yourself, right? You want your feelings to be valid and comforted. And so you'll do some self-comforting by doing a little bit of eating, right? You'll do some emotional eating. Not everybody of your type has this issue. Lots of people of your type are, they've got this piece down. They take care of their bodies. It's no big deal. But there is a component here of emotional eating that ENFJs generally have to watch out for. On the flip side, if you're not doing emotional eating to comfort yourself, on the other side, what you could do is you could still want to hold on to that judgment, but instead of wanting comfort, you want evidence, right? You want support for what you think. So you might look for all sorts of physical evidence to support this unkind judgment. Now, the reason why I say an unkind judgment is generally if you go to the perspectives process, this is where you get compassion, right? If you understand somebody else, if you get inside their mind enough where you truly understand where they're coming from, the natural result is a feeling of compassion. But if you don't want to have to feel compassionate for that person, you want to think whatever it is that you're thinking about them, and without the perspectives process, you'll go to sensation to look for all sorts of physical evidence to prove your point, right? Well, I know that person's a bad person because, and you'll name all these things. The antidote to this, because this is not who you are. Who you are is a compassionate person who's great at conflict resolution. And keeping conflict in your heart is only a poison. So the antidote to this is to go into the perspectives process and get inside the mind of the person that you're thinking unkindly about until you feel compassion. And you feel compassion when you've truly understood someone. So keep understanding them until that is your natural conclusion. This is also where your enjoyment of physical activity comes from, though. So even though it's your 10-year-old, it's your defensive position, you can use it in a positive way. And this is where you like to be active. So instead of emotional eating, I know lots of ENFJs who are super into dancing, like belly dancing, performance arts. They're really into riding bikes and doing all sorts of fun activities outside. They're into working out, right? That's another one that's very common for ENFJ. So take care of your body in that way. Learn how good it can feel to be inside your body in a way that's promoting its health and not just nourishing it. Possibly over-nourishing. All right, let's talk about the 3-year-old accuracy. Introverted thinking is the exact opposite of extroverted feeling. And you generally go to your 3-year-old when you are massively stressed. The reason you do this is that your driver process is the process that you're experiencing most of the world through. All of us do this. It doesn't matter what type it is. Our driver is the lens through which we see and experience the world. So if we're dealing with a problem, we are almost always trying to solve it through our driver process. So you've got a problem, usually conflict. You try to use harmony, try to use it, and it's just not working. And your driver now gets overtaxed, right? It's like trying to do something over and over and just having no success. Well, your brain knows, okay, look, I got to give my driver a break. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to its exact opposite, right? And give it a little bit of time to chill out. It's an amazing mechanism, and it's incredible that their brain knows how to do this. But the problem is number one, you're already stressed out. And number two, you're going to a 3-year-old position. The way it looks like for you is generally hyper criticism. This is both of yourself and other people. When you get stressed out, it's very common for people of your type to say, I just go into this hypercritical mode. I can't do anything right. I'm overly perfectionistic. Nothing is okay. And I just go really depressed, right? Like I just, everything. I'm just terrible at everything and everybody else sucks and I just hate life. Well, it's great that your brain knows to go to accuracy, but it's controlling you. The mechanism is being controlled by something else. So if you control the mechanism, it actually works out. And the way you can de-stress is by doing simple logic puzzles. Now, people of your type say they hate Sudoku, they hate Tetris, they hate crossword puzzles, they hate Scrabble, they hate all that stuff, right? That's not usually their cup of tea. However, when you are in a really stressed out time period, go to one of those places, like do a Sudoku, a very simple Sudoku puzzle, or do a very simple crossword puzzle. Basically, what you're trying to do is completely get out of yours and other people's emotions, and you're trying to get into your head, right? 100%. I know somebody of your type who does math problems, right? Simple math problems, some division algebra or whatever. And this is so that they can just not have to think about how other people feel, right? Takes them totally out of that social piece. So to de-stress, instead of going to a hypercritical place, which is really judgmental of yourself and others, instead just go to a cold, calculated place and be there until, for maybe 20 or 30 minutes, and then check in with Harmony. Are you okay? Can we get back on the road? And if Harmony's like, yeah, I've done enough rest, great. If it hasn't, keep working on those puzzles until you feel truly like Harmony got a break. Your 3-year-old is also where your aspiration comes from. And the reason why this is where your aspiration comes from is that the problems, because your 3-year-old's a blind spot, right? Like you're always in your driver. So its opposite is just not on your radar. And the problems that get created because you're not using it now have to be solved in a different creative way. Right? Like most of us would just use Harmony to solve this problem, or accuracy to solve this problem. But you can't use accuracy to solve it because you don't even think about accuracy as an option. So you've got to find a different way to solve the same problem. And that becomes your aspiration. So the way it looks for people of your type is it can inspire you to develop extreme expertise in your field. Accuracy people focus, they get really good at the nuances and the data of the things that they're interested in. And the way it can become an aspiration for you is to become the expert in the field that you are interested in and really focus on that. So if you use this as your aspiration, that's a very healthy expression of the accuracy process. Let's talk about your type in relationships. Obviously, it's not going to surprise you. You connect with the heart first. It's very easy for people of your type to network and make new friends. So if you are in a relationship with someone, the connective piece, the heart piece, very important to you. Now, those of you in a relationship with the ENFJ, just know that they work tirelessly to help you develop your full potential. They want you to feel supported. They want you to feel like, you are getting your needs met. So ENFJ's amazing at doing this. It is true that people of your type can sometimes have kooky or ill thought out personal views. So what does that mean? Well, sometimes people of your type, because they're not going to the accuracy piece, they're leading with what they see as, basically what's impacting them and the people they love on an emotional level. If they don't go to perspectives, right? If they don't take in enough information and really pattern recognize, if they just look for surface evidence from sensation, they can get attached to a personal idea or a belief that it's not really supported, right? Like if you really thought about it, if you really went inside yourself, you'd go, yeah, maybe this is not really what's going on. So the antidote to this is to be open to being challenged, all right? When people challenge your beliefs, it is rarely personal. I know it's hard not to take it personally. It is very difficult not to take everything personally, but it's not personal. Many people will have trouble understanding your intuition. That's a big one. Sometimes your kooky ideas, they're actually true. That's the other piece. Sometimes your kooky ideas are way out there and have no, relationship with reality. And sometimes your kooky ideas are on the cutting edge of reality. You know stuff that other people don't know. Other people may not really understand where you're coming from. So they'll need a lot of clarification and distinction making to make sense of things. What that means is they're going to need you to be really clear about your explanations to really understand where you're coming from. And that means you're going to have to get clear about your beliefs. You're going to have to get really clear about why you believe the things you do, and you're going to have to support it with some really, really smart, logical ways of going about it. Your perspectives process can really help with this by taking in large amounts of information. Perspectives needs quiet to really ruminate, but one major thing it loves to do is read. So use the perspectives process to consume large amounts of information and really get an idea of what's going on, as opposed to just getting a feeling of what's happening and then supporting it with, maybe some really surface evidence. People of your type can struggle with personal health and taking care of yourself. ENFJs can struggle with their weight, and it's common to be an emotional eater. So again, make sure you've got your finger on the pulse of this. Are you using the sensation process to take care of your body, or are you using it to indulge? What's awesome about people of this type, for those of you in a relationship with them, they are willing to sacrifice. They're willing to do things your way, given that they know what to expect. So always tune in with your They're always in tune with your feelings and needs. Make sure you don't take advantage of this. ENFJs will totally throw themselves under a bus for you. Remember, those of you who are ENFJs, that you are part of everyone when you're trying to get everyone's needs met. Don't neglect yourself. It's incredibly important. Let's talk about this type in business. You have to be in a career where the social factor is important. If you're not dealing with people, you will get bored and frustrated. So make sure that there's a connective social component. Oftentimes, you have trouble paying attention to the little details, and that's okay. My type does too. I hate dealing with details. You're probably better at it than I am. So don't worry that you're not a detail person. Now, the one time that this is an exception is in aesthetic matters. I know people of your type that are extremely good graphic designers, extremely good interior decorators, and you're great at the details there because you have a sense for how other people are going to be experiencing, say, the room or experiencing the picture. But if it's details crossing every T and dotting every I, that's not going to be your thing. So make sure you're delegating that. ENFJs are excellent missionaries and diplomats who thrive with a supporter that holds the mission. So your in-charge manner is best paired with somebody who has a behind-the-scenes conviction. INFPs, behind-the-scenes convictions all the way. So INFPs and ENFJs are considered a power pair. So you're good at being a missionary, but you need somebody who holds that mission for you. You need somebody who reminds you regularly what you're working for, because sometimes you'll get lost in the social component of it. Be in charge, that's awesome. Make sure you've got somebody who's behind the scenes helping and supporting you. Technical matters are not really very interesting to ENFJs, and you probably know that. If you need technological expertise, rely on somebody else to do this. Go ahead and delegate that piece as well. You're great at being in charge. You're great at the people component, but you are not that great at the technical piece, and that's okay. Other people are better at that. Go ahead and delegate it to them. So many hands make for light work. That's awesome, and you can be very productive and very proactive. So what's great about people of your type is that they're really good at kind of getting everybody mobilized to get a task going. But you can also sometimes annoy people with being a busybody or being a gossip. This is not all the time, and this is not intended to be insulting, but you know that you're probably somebody who really enjoys that social piece enough to bring it into the workplace. Make sure that you're not basically indulging this behavior with people who need to focus. There are other people who work best by working alone. So go ahead and give them space, give them time to do that focused work, and you can promote harmony by letting them have their time to themselves. It's cool that you're great at being in charge, but remember, other people might just need some space. Let's talk about best practices for people of your type. Exercise the perspectives process. It is so important to develop that co-pilot piece, that navigator piece. You can't neglect it. And you do that to, one, Find views and missions where both heart and head agree. Okay, so you can't just make it an emotional component. Your brain has to be there with you after it's taken in lots of information. So illogical and irrational views can do long-term damage if they're not open to challenge or revision. What does that mean? It means that you can be totally into a mission that's actually doing harm even though you have good intent. So make sure that the things that you attach yourself to, the missions you attach yourself to, have a logical component to them, have a rational component. And it's your perspectives process that will get you to that place. And use it, of course, to plan ahead and understand different strategies for accomplishing your goals. Make sure that you're the most effective that you can be by using perspectives to plan things out and get to where you want to go. Remember to give others the space to change the mission and point out weaknesses in the plan. So you may be the most passionate, but you'll stay that way if you don't let others make it their own. So make sure that when you are in charge, which you usually are, make sure that when you're the person who's driving a mission, that other people are owning the mission as well. They can only basically borrow your passion for so long, and you've got to let them do it the way that they want to do it. You've got to give them that space. Perspectives will help you give other people space because you'll be seeing the mission the way that they see it. You'll be able to get inside their minds and really understand where they're coming from. Make sure that you're doing that often enough and you're not just pushing. And acquire some knowledge on nutrition and exercise. Prevent physical health problems before having to correct them. It's really high leverage for people of your type to take care of their bodies. I know we've mentioned it a couple times. We're not indicating that everybody of your type is obese or anything, but the important thing is to not neglect that physical piece because you will work tirelessly for others. You will neglect your own health and you'll neglect your own needs because you're focused so much on everybody else's. So make sure that you are, again, including yourself in the word everybody when you're getting everybody's needs met. And make sure that the health piece is a very big leverage part of how you're getting your needs met. So thank you very much for joining me on the Harmony Perspectives webinar, the ENFJ Counselor Style. Just before I end, I just want to make a note to those of you who are ENFJs. Your type is not that common. It's actually pretty rare. And you bring such an important element to the world. People of your type create harmony wherever they go. And if you're using your skills as a force for good, you can truly be diplomats that bring the world together, like on a world peace scale. Seriously, you're amazing at that. Make sure that the missions you're attached to are well thought out. Make sure that you are always focused on creating harmony and not trying to basically manufacture conflict by taking things personally. And please bring your gift to the world because we need it so badly. And when you do, we all benefit.